Very well, ladies and gentlemen, let's pass now to the final presentation of this lecture, namely the condition under which Einstein special relativity and Galilei relativity are completely inapplicable. Namely, and again I must repeat and insist that the use of the word violated is scientifically and ethically inappropriate, because we will be referring to a condition dramatically beyond those of the original conception of those theories. Therefore, the use of the word violation is highly improper. I have three examples. There are many. I have prepared three examples, otherwise this lecture would have been too long. The example number one is the following. Here there is an example of coal burning to illustrate an energy releasing process. The statement is that Einstein's special relativity and Galilei relativity are inapplicable for quantitative, therefore scientific representation of any energy releasing processes. We will review this in technical details at all levels, mathematical, physical, experimental, etc. But at this moment, we're at the conceptual level of this first lecture. It's sufficient to remember that, both special relativity and Galilei relativity were conceived, constructed, implemented, verified for systems that are reversible over time. Namely, for systems that when inspected from their time reversal image, they still verify causality. For instance, here we have an atomic structure, and in which, as stated before, the special relativity and Galilei relativity are exactly valid. Now, suppose that we reverse time. What happened? Well, with reverse time, what happened is that this electron, rather than rotating this way, will rotate in the other way. But the atom will remain causal, will exist. So what we are saying that now the special relativity and Galilei relativity are also valid for time reversal images, a broadening of their validity. However, the point is that it's also my duty to remember that the statue of Albert Einstein. Albert Einstein is Albert Einstein because he deserved the statue, a towering statue in history. He knew that the system of his time, to be studied of his time, he knew that they are reversible over time. So therefore, he had to construct his theory in such a way that the theory had to be reversible over time as a condition to represent systems that are reversible over time. But let's look at any energy releasing process. The time reversal image of this coal burning implies the smoke and the ashes reconstructing the original coal. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not science. Any theory that admits such a time reversal image cannot be considered suitable for the release of energy, of any energy amount. As we will see during the course of our presentation, this is a fundamental point. Indeed, we have in order to predict new clean energy and fuels, and I'm very proud as an American to present it, because all this development occurred in the United States of America, thanks to the diversity of our country. But all the new energy and fuels that we will present on level 5 were centrally depending on our first constructing mathematics that is irreversible over time, then physics and chemistry, and go all the way to level 5. In any case, there is also another point I intend to express rather clearly. My academic colleague can indeed use special relativity, specifically in this case relativistic quantum mechanics, for energy releasing processes such as nuclear fusion, which is on the study now under the so-called cold fusion, hot fusion at all levels, everywhere. They can indeed use relativistic quantum mechanics, and they can, sometimes they are requested by their dean to use relativistic quantum mechanics because that's the only way to get grants, even nowadays. However, I'm funded by corporate sources. My investors, if they know that I use Einstein special relativity to study energy releasing process, they can sue me, and they can sue me for fraud, And the lawsuit will not be frivolous, especially in view of the fact that we now have we have surpassed Einstein, and we have broader theory that are structurally reversible. That certainly will not be perfect, certainly will not be the final theory of the universe, that's for sure. But they are at least more effective for the specific study of new energy. So a judge who looks at the lawsuit will ask the question, Dr. Santilli, why you don't use those new theories? They are so much better for the problem you're studying, and you are using instead Einstein theory. Is this for political reason that you are doing it? So there is a dramatic distinction between corporate environment and academic environment. It is also important to remember that the most important scientific discovery throughout the world of the last 50 years have occurred in corporate environment. Let me move to the next issue. This is another case which I have dedicated many years of my life, in which after trying the impossible to solve the problem via relativistic quantum mechanics, one day I had to finally say, that's it. It is inapplicable. And what is this? It's the synthesis of the neutron in the core of a star. As you all know, stars initiate their life as being composed by a gas of hydrogen. When they reach a certain mass, this gas condenses, it reaches a certain pressure, temperature, etc., well known in the literature, at which time stars synthesize the neutron. From where? From the hydrogen atom. This is a Rutherford hypothesis in 1920, for which he received the Nobel Prize, because Chadwick, 12 years later, in 1932, confirmed it. So the hydrogen atom condenses under the extreme pressure in the core of a star and synthesizes the neutron first. After, and only after, the neutron is synthesized, then star can synthesize the deuterium and all the other elements. At that moment, you see this majestic phenomenon in nature, which is unbelievably beautiful. You see the birth of a star. Star is namely an object that was dark, all of a sudden start producing light. This is, however, the central phenomenon, the central event, the synthesis of the neutron. Now, especially relativistic quantum mechanics, as I stated repeatedly, is exactly valid for the structure of the hydrogen atom, because the electron is far away from the proton, can be well approximated as a point. All the topology, algebra, geometry, everything applies beautifully and exactly at this level. But when we go to the synthesis of the neutron, ladies and gentlemen, we have a dramatically different physical condition. To be scientific, we should at least ask the question, is relativistic quantum mechanics still valid when an electron is totally immersed in the densest medium we have measured in laboratory until now, which is the proton? Proton is not empty, it's ultra hyperdense medium, the densest we have ever measured so far. The electron has to penetrate completely inside the proton to achieve the synthesis. How can possibly the theory be valid under those new conditions? There is no possibility, ladies and gentlemen. The reason that is inapplicable are a large factor of the reason of applicability, which are extremely weak and mostly theological or politically. We will enter into this at the mathematical, physical, chemical, and other levels. Conceptually, you can see here. Here you have only action at a distance. Here we have non interaction. Interaction are non-linear, non-local, non-Hamiltonian, non-potential, because we have a contact interaction due to the total mutual penetration. Our group has dedicated decades to the study of this synthesis. That's why hadronic mathematics, mechanics, and chemistry have been developed to achieve a quantitative, which means numerical representation of all characteristics of the neutron in synthesis from a proton and an electron. This was achieved finally in 1990, and then eventually at the non-relativistic level, in 1993. But why all this large effort? We are talking about thousands of pages written on this problem alone, for a very simple reason. And here is the emergence of very serious social aspect that we, as a physicist, we simply cannot ignore. Otherwise, we risk condemnation by contemporary society, let alone a future historian. The neutron is one of the largest reservoirs of clean energy available to mankind. Why? Because it's naturally unstable and returns to the original structure, spits an electron, spits a proton and an electron. Proton remains at rest, and the electron is very energetic, about 0.8 million electron volts. Electrons can be trapped very easily with the thin metal shields by producing a double, not single, double energy, type of energy, one of thermal due to the absorption of 0.8 million electron volts, and secondly because of energy of electric type, since the screen becomes charged with electrons. It becomes negatively charged, it becomes a battery. So, conclusion, we have an ethical duty to study the limitation of special relativity and quantum mechanics, because we're talking, if we, as it has been the case throughout the past century, if this problem is suppressed because known to be incompatible with Einstein theory and quantum mechanics, then, ladies and gentlemen, we really put the premises for endangering society, certainly not to help society. And as we will see, this is a central problem that actually hadronic mechanics was specifically constructed, specifically proposed for a quantitative solution of this problem, the synthesis of the neutron. A technical reason, which we will see later on, but let me flash it from now, otherwise people who have not been exposed to this may think that where is all this coming from? You see, is that the rest energy of the neutron is bigger than the sum of the rest energy of the proton and of the electron. And now, by comparison, all consistent quantum mechanically bound state, as I expect everybody will agree, they have a negative binding energy. They end up with a mass defect. This is indeed the case in which, of the second slide I have projected of the atomic bomb. All this energy comes because the nuclei that have been broken down, essentially the missing mass is turned into energy. In the case of the synthesis of the neutron, we have exactly the opposite. We need energy to synthesize the neutron because the original mass and rest energy are insufficient. Now, under those conditions, we have the collapse of all quantum mechanical equations and law I am aware of. In particular, for a mathematician who may be interested in this, we will see quantitatively on level 3 and 4 and 5, the initial equation of Schrödinger equation blows up, has no minimum solution, because for anybody who has doubt, I recommend them strongly to try to solve the Schrödinger equation for the hydrogen atom that has beautiful solution. Try to solve it by changing the sign of the potential. From a negative energy in the Schrödinger equation of the hydrogen atom, I urge them to be serious scientists, to try to solve it by changing that sign and turn it into a plus. Because that's what will be needed here. You need energy, so you have a positive binding energy to represent the rest energy. I can assure you they will find no solution. Finally, let me to elaborate again on the societal aspect of the topic of this first lecture. Let me elaborate on a little bit on an aspect which will be the topic of special lecture on level 2 and 3, namely antimatter. Now, as all scientists know, Einstein's special and general relativity, they have no technical means for any serious representation, any scientific representation of antimatter, particularly at the classical level. Why? Because the only distinction that they have is the sign of the charge. Ladies and gentlemen, this is immensely insufficient to have a conjugation from matter to antimatter, because it's an anti-isomorphic conjugation. You need a completely new mathematics at all levels, from sinus, cosinus, the derivative, everything has to be anti-isomorphic. But in any case, when I look at a galaxy through a telescope, and I want to know if that galaxy is made of matter or antimatter, Einstein there is no answer whatsoever, none, because that galaxy is neutral. And when you have a neutral, there is no distinction whatsoever in all Einstein theory between neutral matter and antimatter. This is not an insufficiency of Einstein. I have to defend Einstein and separate the stature of Einstein from the abuses of his name by Einstein followers. In this case, antimatter didn't even exist when special relativity was conceived, and when general relativity was discovered years later. So any statement that antimatter violates Einstein is very, very unethical in my view. But there are Einstein followers that made the conclusion, since this is very well known and announced nowadays, since Einstein theory do not describe antimatter, antimatter does not exist. This is one of the many, many adaptations of nature to a preferred theory for theological, or let me say explicitly, political, unfortunate, political reason, the word unfortunate for mankind and new knowledge. So, but the point is, however, here is now we enter into societal aspect. The evidence disprove this theology, because we have a rather sinister episode in our planet that we have been hit by an antimatter asteroid. Antimatter asteroid. This is one. This is a famous Tunguska explosion in Siberia in 1927, in which there was a devastation as big as twice the size of Texas. It was computed later on, the explosion was about 1,000 atomic bomb, was the equivalent of 1,000 atomic bomb. The seismograph all over the earth detected it. Light was, even at night in Moscow and Paris, even at night, people would read newspapers in the middle of the night because the light was still luminescent. Now, following countless expeditions, there have never ever been any solid residue out of this explosion. As a matter of fact, the center of the explosion, the trees were still standing up, were scorched, but still standing up. So the only serious scientific, which means numerical, not political, the only serious explanation is that the Tunguska explosion was due to an antimatter asteroid. And because any matter asteroid must have left an enormous crater with 1,000 atomic bomb. Imagine the crater that this thing would have left. Siberia would have gone by then. So there is a limit of theology about which I cannot follow. I have to separate myself from my colleagues, because otherwise we pass science and ethical duties toward personal interest, and I do not intend to cross that line. Now, but the issue is this. Now, is there additional evidence besides the Tunguska? Yes, there is a lot. This is a picture from NASA. There are a number of them. Look at this. Look at this. It's the very, very upper layer of the atmosphere. Look at this. It's already in enormous incandescence. Question: can any physicist prove to me that this is certainly a matter asteroid that has this type of incandescence? I can do countless calculations showing no, this is an antimatter, because the density of the upper atmosphere was just not enough to create all these incandescents. It is, however, sufficient to cause annihilation of matter and antimatter. So also in any case, when astronaut, cosmonaut, when they cross the dark side of Earth, they see flashes in the dark side. Ladies and gentlemen, those are antimatter cosmic ray that they reach the upper layer of the atmosphere and they annihilate. The moment any type of antimatter is in touch with any type of matter, they annihilate and turn into light. It's a majestic phenomenon of nature. Let's go now to societal implication of this excessive subservience of adapting reality to a preferred theory. What's at stake for mankind? This is the issue I'm trying to address very openly, because the stakes are very high. Here what you see is a matter asteroid. Everybody knows it is illuminated by the sun, which is here. The light sun is reflected by this asteroid, and thanks God we can see the asteroid. The matter asteroids, thanks God we can see them, and now we have a realistic possibility of defending this little planet by a small or large matter asteroid. We can send nuclear bomb with missiles, intercontinental missile can be shot, and I'm sure we have a realistic opportunity of disintegrating in space. But question, suppose this asteroid is made of antimatter. Can the same sunlight be reflected by the antimatter asteroid? Ladies and gentlemen, The answer, the technical answer is no, it will annihilate. At least this is for all the knowledge that we have accumulated with the mathematics, the physics, and the experiments that we have done. Consequently, there is a very realistic chance that antimatter asteroids are invisible to mankind. So therefore, they represent a threat to our society. Now, so here now you start to see the danger of ignoring antimatter just because it's not described by Einstein theory. Now we see a direct impact on the very safety of our society. I have to be very specific on this point. Throughout the entire the 20th century, a very significant, if not large number of experiments were dismissed, discredited, rejected, obstructed at the very suspicion, that the results might be incompatible with Einstein theory. This is fully documented with many volumes of documentation, none of which in my possession for my own safety. They are all in the hands of historians abroad. Now, but the point is this. If we do the same, namely we ignore, we suppress, we discredit, we avoid the quantitative study of antimatter, then, ladies and gentlemen, we risk to endanger mankind because of the realistic possibility that we can be hit by an antimatter asteroid without even our knowledge. Ladies and gentlemen, this is an abuse of science for personal interest. I have no intention of following or be part of. I'm sure all serious colleagues who listen to this lecture will agree with the same conclusion. In any case, let me finish with a comment. With a comment on the universe. Cosmology will be many lectures from many distinguished scientists in this series will be presenting their view on cosmology. Let me tell you now that very quickly that Einstein's special relativity has been applied throughout all possible conditions existing in the universe, expectedly by some, but not all, until the end of time. All the cosmological theory that are now dominating, they are a direct consequence, intentional, studious consequence of the assumption that special relativity is exactly valid everywhere throughout the universe. The expansion of the universe is the first direct consequence because of the Doppler effect. It's the Big Bang, direct consequence. Dark matter, dark energy, they were studiously proposed to derail the attention on what is the real expectation, that there are deviations from special relativity. For dark matter in the dynamics of a galaxy, and the dark energy for the dynamics of the entire universe. But, ladies and gentlemen, the nature is a perfect vacuum only at the atomic level, or if you want, at best at the planetary level. At intergalactic distance, the universe is not a vacuum. At intergalactic distance, the universe is a physical medium with a very high energy density. You don't need calculation and measurement. Just think that if you are in any point of the universe, from that point, you can see the entire universe. So that point is crossed by an enormous number of light rays, which imagine the energy density per point. Since the universe is a physical medium, then there are very serious reasons to expect that special relativity is only approximately, but it's an interior dynamical problem. Therefore, all those conjectures that you are so dominating now, once they are examined on true scientific grounds, without personal interest or political aims, then all of them, as you will see, they show some very fundamental flaws that now have been even resolved by experiment, by measuring lately the so-called ISO redshift. We will see in level, you have to wait until level 5. If I present it to you now, most of even the most distinguished colleagues, unless they know the new mathematics, new physics, and so on, they will not understand what we are talking about. But there is one final point I want to talk to you about regarding antimatter. Again, since Einstein has nothing to do with antimatter, the universal, rather universal in certain segment of society, of academic society, but not all. the dominating attitude by collegial acclaim, of course, not by evidence, certainly not by evidence, collegial acclaim, they claim, no, what you see is what is out there. Namely, these are all matter galaxies, and that's what is out there. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a theology. This is a pure theology with no scientific foundation. Why so? We are talking about the complementary case of an antimatter asteroid. In the case of antimatter asteroid, we have sunlight, light from a matter that is expected not to be reflected by an antimatter asteroid that produces no light of its own. Here we have the complementary case. We are talking about a possible galaxy made up of antimatter that produces its own light. This light has been proven to be different than ordinary matter. It's called now technically the isodual light. And like any manifestation of antimatter, when in touch with matter, annihilates. So, conclusion, according to our best knowledge, light emitted from an antimatter galaxy will never reach us, because the light will annihilate like antimatter cosmic ray will annihilate in the upper layer of the atmosphere. Forget about the lower one. But then immediately when colleagues see, some, not all, colleagues see deviation from beloved theory, there are hundreds of arguments, some of them very fantastic, some credible. Immediately, oh, but Dr. Santilli, now we have telescope in orbit. Unfortunately, this is not a valid argument. Why? Because most of those telescopes have lenses. And all the knowledge that we have is that light emitted by an antimatter galaxy will annihilate in the lens and will not reach the plate. Conclusion, there is no, this is the scientific statement. The scientific statement that is the departure from Einstein follower. Einstein follower, they are essentially given by academicians in the posture of power who make firm statement that they are the recipient of physical truth. I want to depart from them as dramatically as possible. The scientific statement is the humble, we do not know. We got to investigate this, because the very safety of mankind, just on the question of antimatter, is at stake. And when we see that in addition to the safety of mankind, we need to study antimatter beyond Einstein, not with Einstein doctrine. You cannot do it. There is nothing you can do with Einstein. You have to go beyond Einstein. But antimatter is only one. The rest is the resolution of an increasing cataclysmic climatic event that we have seen here in Florida. Sometime I worked with my office. It was like a German bunker during World War II because of the arrival of hurricanes. So there is an increasing, alarming deterioration of our environment that requires new clean energy fuels. Otherwise, we will not solve, physics community, scientific community, we will not solve those problems. The only way to solve them, as we will see, and this is the main and most important message of this series of lectures, is by surpassing Einstein, of course, and quantum mechanics, of course, only under the conditions that were unthinkable during Einstein time. By honoring Einstein, Schrödinger, Heisenberg, and all the Enrico Fermi, all the founders of the 20th century model, because their discovery remain fully valid. As a matter of fact, acquire the proper scientific light and dimension which they deserve in history. Thank you very much.
Professor Santilli, I'm not fully convinced special relativity is inaccurate within physical media. Could you elaborate?
Thank you for asking this question. It is an important question indeed. After 1 century of using special relativity for all possible conditions existing in the universe, then it's understandable the feeling of colleagues such as yours. Well, however, on fully scientific grounds, there are serious difficulties in even defining the basic principle of special relativity within a physical medium. As you know, special relativity is centered on the equivalence of all physical laws for inertial reference frames. Now, there are no inertial reference frames that can be possibly defined or introduced within physical media, such as think about underneath the ocean water or within the chromosphere of the sun or similar physical media. Additionally, the special relativity requires the equivalence of all inertial frames, and any absolute frame will violate the very, very central axioms. Well, suppose you are in water, there is only one reference frame and one only that you can use for physics, for science, namely for measurements. And that is the frame at rest with the water. So this is another major shortcoming of the very definition of relativity, special relativity within physical media. But keep in mind that the purpose of the objective of 20th century science is to look for the dynamics within physical media in which light does not propagate at all. They are opaque. The moment colleagues and particularly so-called Einstein followers, they realize that we are talking about problems in which you cannot even introduce light, then I see them pale and express anguish, because light is the very foundation of special relativity. So when you cannot propagate light, there is no possibility, not even remote, of even hoping somehow of introducing, maintaining special relativity within physical media.
Professor Santilli, relativistic quantum mechanics is routinely used for the physics of baryons. Please explain again why, in your view, it is not applicable for the structure of the neutron.
This is also a beautiful question. I appreciate, and very deep for that matter, and I appreciate you asking. Indeed, what you state is correct. The SU3, the color model, is essentially based on relativistic quantum mechanics, and indeed has achieved what I consider the final Mendeleev-type classification of hadron at large and baryons in particular into families. However, however, what I am referring to is a different issue. I'm referring to the synthesis of the neutron in the core of a star, synthesis from a proton and electrons, which has to be studied, however, with a serious special lecture dedicated exclusively to that problem. When you enter into technical details, and you will see that relativistic quantum mechanics admits no solution, or nor can be hoped, because on a number of conceptual, but as well as technical. But the strongest reason is that what I have indicated during the lecture, namely that the rest energy of the neutron is bigger than the sum of the rest energy of the proton and of electrons, thus requiring positive binding energy under which there is not even a dream of maintaining the consistency of relativistic quantum mechanics.
Professor Santilli, I definitely disagree that sunlight would be absorbed by an antimatter asteroid. Could you convince me to the contrary?
Well, this is a question that unfortunately I have to be on record to disagree. Let's analyze the origin of the question. The origin of the question is the desire to apply Einstein's special relativity for all possible conditions existing in the universe until the end of time, thus including antimatter. But if you have an asteroid that is neutral, Einstein special and general relativity have absolutely nothing to say. So therefore, your question is implicitly, that I have to uncover, unfortunately, with all due respect, I have to uncover the background of the question. Namely, you assume special relativity to be exactly valid for antimatter when we know that there is no description whatsoever, because they cannot distinguish between neutral matter and antimatter. And consequently, you make the conclusion that then, since there is no distinction, according to Einstein followers, between matter and antimatter, then of course sunlight must be reflected from antimatter. I disagree dramatically. This is a theology and not serious science. The serious science is what I have stated during my lecture, namely, we do not know. We do not know. We have to investigate it. And then we can reach a conclusion, I am convinced or I am not convinced. And I insist on this, that we have to study, because otherwise we endanger mankind just to follow a preferred theory. I will never be part of such a scheme.